I have a special treat for you on today's episode of the PreSales podcast. Hello, everyone. My name is Jack Cochran, General Manager of PreSales Collective, and I was happy enough to be joined by Darlene Volas, who was most recently leading the customer organization at Firebolt. She is a senior solutions engineering executive, has lots of years of experience, both in the world of leading SC teams as well as AI and how SC teams need to be set up to use AI properly. She's been doing that herself and got to pick her brain a little bit on what it means to have an AI-enabled SC, an AI-empowered SC. What does that really look like? How do you need to set up your team in order to get that? What do you and don't you need to do? Fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed having her on the show. If you missed out on this, we do these summits about once a quarter, various topics. Our first quarter topic was AI. So it was our AI-powered pre-sales summit. We always do a special edition podcast episode in those summits. So make sure you're looking out for those. You can join the live recording of the podcast, ask some Q&A questions live as well. Well, that's about it. For those of you who are brand new, welcome. I host these episodes along with Matthew James, who's not here for the intro, but he joined for the episode as well. And I look forward to hearing your feedback on this one. Darlene, welcome to the AI Powers Pre-Sale Summit, and welcome to this special edition of the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm excited. This is a great topic. And honestly, AI is top of mind for everyone. I live at home with my husband, and he is also in tech. And so the amount of times that AI comes up in daily conversation here in my household is actually a little bit ridiculous. Not the case 3-4 years ago. Now, totally insane.
If you watched the Oscars, we heard from Conan, who said he's the last human host of the Oscars. So I think it's going to be AI from here forward.
Fair.
Darlene, before we get into the questions, could you tell us the last thing that you used AI for in your personal life?
Oh, yes. So fun fact, I guess I can't say amateur potter anymore. I do pottery. I'm a potter. And so I have been using it more for taking a picture of something and wanting to recreate sort of glazes and whatnot. And so the last thing that I did was to do exactly that. Like, hey, look at this really cool pot. How can I recreate this glaze combination with things that I might already have? And it's really fun to be able to do that. I like being able to use AI in like my creative ventures as well. So for pottery.
I love that. Finding ways to use AI in your personal life, I think, is very fulfilling when it's things that you wouldn't know how to do, or you would have taken you a long time that you could say, at least give me a kickstart here. At least give me a kickstart. And kind of speaking of that, we talked about this before, about how stuff has been changing through the utilization, even in your personal lives. I was thinking about 6 months ago, people were saying, I use AI as my Google replacement. I think we actually heard someone mentioning that in the last session. Someone was saying, you used to say, well, I Googled it as a reason for why you know something. And people are now using AI as their Google replacement. And that's fine. But that's not enough anymore when we talk about what it means to be an AI-enabled SC, to be AI thinking, especially if that's a requirement for your role. What does a more sophisticated answer look like today, Darlene, when you're thinking about the question of how do you use AI?
I mean, my mom is using ChatGPT to answer questions now. So if that is the case, a good solutions engineer needs to be well past that. It's like saying you're an expert in social media, but like you're just scrolling Facebook. So yes, the question is coming up everywhere. Either leadership, hiring managers, customers, partners, everybody is asking how you're using AI. They're all looking for an answer that's better than I'm using it as my Google replacement. I think the key to this, I'll kind of share my short answer version of the question, but I would say that it can't just be buzzwords. Like you have to really be using AI and you have to really showcase that. I think real examples are key. The short answer to that for me is I use it in 3 different buckets. One, I use it as sort of like my operations chief of staff. AI helps me with planning and triage and reminders so that my time during the week maps to the priorities that I have, not just whatever is on fire in my inbox the most. Monday morning, Sunday night, I'll sit down with Perplexity or Claude are usually my tools of choice. I use it to help prioritize my week. Look at my calendar. Look at the things that are in my inbox. Look at things that have been most recently chatted about. What should I be focusing on? I kind of have a sense of what they are, but this helps me not miss key things. It helps me block focus time. Like, hey, you've got these 5 meetings that are all sporadic on your calendar. Let's move some things around to help do that. So it's almost like my personal assistant, but I don't have a personal assistant. So it's AI. But I also use it because I'm in the West Coast. I've had global teams. And by the time I wake up and start my day, there is usually threads and threads of conversation that are happening that I get to. And I'm like, oh, I can't catch up on all this really easily. I'm using it to help summarize long threads, surface decisions so that I can prioritize, again, all in the name of like being as efficient as possible since there's so many things to do. The second bucket that I often look at or that I'm using for AI in my personal world is operationalizing SE teams. We've talked a lot about that. I don't just use it personally, but I also want to design repeatable SE workflows that scale across the team. So customer health scoring, POC tracking, document creation, RFP drafting. These are all things that I've done in the past. Usually I'll pull out a couple of nuggets of examples, but those are the big categories there. The goal really here is like less time on clerical work and more time in discovery, more time into solution design, more time on executive conversations where you really need SEs to win these deals, as opposed to a lot of the admin work. One more thing, which is the technical part of it. And I think it's important because we often talk about it a lot of times in the operational sense, but I do try to do as much as possible of building tools in AI, especially being on a more technical side of things lately. I lean on tools like Cursor, Copilot, Claude Code, Codex for like day-to-day coding. Lately, it's been for my personal projects, which is kind of a nice thing. I designed a front end for my dive log. I'm a diver as well. I've been building out some cool tools for my pottery studio. But what's interesting about this is it helps build credibility with engineers. So as I'm talking about RAG patterns or LLM evaluations or observability in production, like you've actually implemented them and debugged them yourselves. So for me, it's those three categories that I'm using it. When I think about it that way, I'm like, wow, I'm really using a lot of AI. It's kind of ridiculous because it's all in the last year or two that we've really sort of put this huge focus on AI.
It's been such a big shift. And I like the distinction you made, which is thinking about the things that are, clerical work, right? The things where you should be able to automate some of the processes. But the pushback that I would say is I've been finding that as I do that, I'm not actually spending less time on it. I just am getting better results with the same amount of time. For example, I did something also very similar to you. It sounds like the first thing I thought of is, my goodness, if AI could be my personal assistant, I'm all over this. And so I built a daily meeting app, and it looks through my Google Drive, it looks through my Obsidian notebook vault, and it looks through my emails. And then every day it looks at my calendar, and for my external meetings, any meeting that I have with anyone who's not just me, so like not a block, it will go through and it'll write, and I give very specific instructions on what I want. I want any documentation that I should know that might be relevant to this conversation, any past email conversations, and helping me, hey, the things that you should probably think about before this meeting. And so it's doing a little bit of pointing me towards what I need to research and surfacing all the relevant documents. And it just runs every night. And so that's the work that, if I had to be honest, I want to do that for every meeting. I never had the bandwidth to spend 3 hours preparing for every half-hour meeting, but now I can. And yes, that still requires more work. I'm spending the same amount of prep time. I'm just far more prepped now than I used to be.
I think you're spot on. There's a lot of talk about efficiency and talk about, is the AI going to replace the humans? But I actually think you're spot on. I think it's going to make us better at our jobs, even if it doesn't save time and doesn't do all the things that we say it's going to do. I do think it's making us qualitatively better, for sure.
When it comes to using AI in our jobs, that second point you mentioned is operationalizing. And that is a big word for me, which probably includes a lot of different things. So would you tell us about what operationalizing an SE team means when it comes to AI?
I would say it really means making it part of like the team's just operating system, their ethos. Like, we are going to use AI to do exactly what Jack said, which is make us better. And that might mean free up time and be more efficient so we can do the things we need to do. It might mean just qualitatively better. It's how we plan, it's how we prep, it's how we execute, how we report. And so I'd say, again, I like to put things into buckets. So I'll put them in a few buckets. Day-to-day execution is number one. It sort of ties into, Jack, what you were speaking about, which is, call prep. Using AI to help generate tailored discovery questions. We shouldn't have to go into a customer call anymore without any sense of any ideas of what someone should be using. Like, there should be some use cases and some workloads on the tip of your tongue ready to talk about in case the customer kind of goes silent. Like there are things that we can be doing. So I'd say live scribing AI and post-process calls into summaries are key. Those things are table stakes now. Most of us have them in things like Gong and other toolings. But I'd say that the thing that often is missed there are like the connection points of like, here's all this summary information. Where are we putting it? Is it going into our CRM? Is it going into some data warehouse so we can use it later? Is it going into Slack? I've seen all of these, which is why I mentioned them. I'd say the other thing here is like giving you first draft documents of all these things that we need to produce. So often SEs will have, your mutual success plan for a POC or a handoff document. You have had all those conversations. So right now it's an SE sitting down and mentally figuring out what all those pieces are. We've recorded all those conversations. It should be very easy to dump all that information into a synthesized document. Now, I still very much say human eyes need to be on all of this because there are still a lot of hallucinations, but like you can start to do that. I'd say once you get some of these things nailed down individually in a team, you then start to make them more repeatable. So then repeating all of these workflows, making them into playbooks. So things like RFPs and security workflows. I'm embarrassed to say that when I was an SE a million years ago, I definitely sat down with the Excel spreadsheet and just like typed out answers to each of the questions. Like we had a database of things that was there, but it wasn't great. So it was easier for me just to go into my brain as the database and type things in. We're years away from that still being the solution, but AI should make that much more clean and much better. Looking at things like POC life cycles, standard prompts that are taking discovery notes and generating the scope, the success criteria. Again, we shouldn't be going in cold to any customer call, whether it be the first call or the 15th call. We should have a lot of information going into it. And I'd say one thing that's probably been underutilized with me, and I need to work on that, which is competitive intel. We've talked about for years about sort of setting traps and setting landmines as you're having conversations. This is helpful. This is helpful to understand like where you're going to see those because we don't always know what's being set for us, but using AI helps us give us a leg up.
Have you ever had one of those sessions where it was like a full day set aside to do a competitive deep dive, like to look through all of your competitors' documentation? I look at that and I go, that feels like a thing that we don't need to really do. We don't need to start from scratch with those anymore, right? Yeah. We should be utilizing that very heavily and at least getting something that tells us, here are the top 3 things you should have your human eyes digging into, as opposed to documentation crawling in a conference room together with 10 people.
Absolutely. I think that as you start to also put these things into play from an operational perspective, I think then from a leadership perspective, the team level visibility and reporting also come into play. So being able to actually see a view of your active POCs and where things are at, like what I love to use this for is also customer health. Like I know the things that are on fire right now. I know the 5 things that are on fire that I needed to take care of. What are the next 5 things that are going to be on fire for me? Who are the customers that are just brewing under the surface that their data probably shows it? Human eyes might not be able to see that, but that's a perfect task for AI to be able to sort of understand, here are some of the patterns and here's customers that you might need to keep an eye on or check in on. And, or, you're in this part of the sales process. These are flags. You need to go check them out. Like we're running risks here that we didn't necessarily realize. I'd say for coaching as well. I used to also, back in the day as an early leader, listen to full calls on 1x, just on regular speed for an hour and go back in and comment on them and help do coaching in that way, do live coaching where I would be in a call. And now that makes it much easier for leaders to be able to coach. Show me 3 of the most recent emails from this SE and how we tighten them up, make them a little bit better. Same thing for calls. I'd say that those are the things that as we talk about operationalizing teams, it's all of these pieces, but then also really looking at it holistically and making sure it all makes sense.
Probably one of the hardest parts for any leader is doing exactly that last piece there. Remaining consistent with coaching and feedback. And it's not for lack of trying. Like every leader wants to be able to provide that. It just takes so much time if you are starting from scratch. And so I'm not saying it needs to replace the feedback. Like, please don't AI feedback your teams. I'm not saying do that. Not just summarize the weak points and just send it to them. Like, no, don't do that. It's not going to go over well. But like utilize things to help with, again, the clerical tasks of combing through things. Help me to know where I can go and do that. I think you're absolutely right. Matthew, I'd cut you off. Go ahead.
It sounds like operationalizing what you said. It's turning it into the team's DNA. Our blood runs AI now. And it sounds like there are ways that everything we do can be transformed in that. Now, if I'm an SE sitting here thinking, hey, Darlene, I'm not a leader, so I don't roll out these technologies and I don't have the power to change all of our processes today. Where can I get started as an individual contributor who wants to use more AI?
So I would say that all of those processes that tend to be operationalized from a leadership perspective typically start from the SE building out something great and then a leader saying, that's awesome. Let's now roll this out to the rest of the team. So I would say, like, especially for those who are looking for growth in your roles, identify those processes. You don't have to wait for a leader to tell you, go do your call discovery better. You can start to brainstorm that and build your own systems for that. So my advice would be to all ICs, figure out where your process you're having the most pain personally, whether it's discovery, whether it's call prep, whether it's whatever else. Figure that out and try some things. Try out some tooling options, try out some things that are available to you, try out different prompts. And those things get surfaced to leadership. They become part of the operational workflow. You don't have to be in that leadership role to do those things and make change.
Let's shift a little bit to talk a little bit about the idea of fluency. And this is coming up a lot, especially for those of you who are doing job searching as well, where you might be asked the question, like, how fluent are you with AI? If you've never really explored and the only thing you know is, well, I used the chat prompt, like, what does this mean? What are some of the fundamentals from your perspective, Darlene, that an SC should be seeking to understand so that they can increase their fluency? Is that understanding how AI architectures work? Is it understanding how to do things like prototyping? Is it building agents? Like, how do you get started down that path? And what does fluency look like?
The challenge with that question, Jack, is that things are moving at such a quick pace that fluency means that you are always staying on top of what is the latest thing that people are talking about. And that is really challenging. So as new tooling comes out, as new thought process come out, new frameworks come out, this is changing constantly. So the things that I'm going to talk about here, literally when someone looks at this in 6 months, it's probably somewhat outdated. And that is, I think, the biggest thing is building a muscle for trying to keep up with things. And we've always, as SEs, been curious and been doing that, but I think it's even more important on the AI side. But I would say that, if I take a step back and say, okay, well, right now at this moment in time, what does AI fluency look like? I think of it in 3 layers. One is patterns. So there's things like RAG for retrieval augmented generation, for utilizing your own data within an AI application. When to rely on prompting versus fine tuning. So when should you just feed more context into a system versus actually specializing a model on your own data and style. Again, not the specifics about that. I don't think you have to know all of the in-depth information to be fluent in AI, but you need to understand those basic terminologies from a pattern perspective. When should we recommend sort of RAG versus prompting versus fine tuning versus how a function takes real actions instead of just generating text? I think these are all pattern recognition things that are truly important for any SE to start being fluent. I think there's an architecture layer. There are so many tools, so many pieces, so many parts of the puzzle. You don't need to be a machine learning engineer, but you should be able to whiteboard an AI app. So the experience layer, the orchestration layer, the data modeling layers, and talk about trade-offs like latency, cost, and security. Those are ever present throughout all of those things. So I think being able to whiteboard very basically how you build an AI app, super important. And then I think I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the third thing being agents. Agentic frameworks, agents. I mean, that's the big thing. You should understand what an agent is. Someone says, what is an agent? That should be a second nature answer. It is simply something that can take an action, in my opinion. It's something that can utilize an LLM or anything really to take an action. You need to know when it's a simple flow of I'm just going to ask this agent a question and call it a day versus a more multi-agent framework where you might need multiple agents, multiple different things, planning, memory, specialized agents, et cetera, where that adds value. I think having an understanding of what that might look like is super important. So here might mean when you hear someone say, oh, we want an AI co-pilot, you can classify that as this versus this versus this, what tools you might need, what frameworks you might look at, and be able to propose an actual prototype as opposed to just I think it works like this. Understanding those 3 pieces at a very high level, to me, is what is important. And I'd say beyond that, for all of you who are at companies right now, your company might not be a quote unquote AI company, but now every company is an AI company. Every single one. I can assure you that every single company has AI on their roadmap or it needs to speak to an AI roadmap. So don't wait for formal enablement for that. Go and ask questions, be proactive in teaching yourself. It is likely to evolve and evolve super fast. So this is ongoing enablement. This is not a one and done. But I think knowing where you fit into this picture also helps you understand like the big picture. You're going to need to know the big picture regardless, but understanding where you fit into that is key. And I think don't wait for that. Understand it now as much as you can.
I heard a stat the other day, something along the lines of people who are working in almost call them industries where you're really out there, people that are in roofing, for example, even they are seeing adoption of AI. And there was something like within 12 months, there's a prediction that 90% of these kinds of companies are going to be using AI for more than just one workflow. And that was provided by a friend of mine who's an expert in that space. And I think the kinds of thing that we're talking about were analoging out from just SEs, but invoicing workflows, things that are manual today. And I think that presents the question for us. If we're looking at your model of fluency, how do we know what's a good problem to apply AI to versus, hey, this is actually where I should use my own expertise?
That's a great question. I'd say the first question to ask is simply, is this even an AI problem? Is this something that AI is good at? And I would say things that fit into the bucket of good AI problems, besides just what we've covered so far, which is like all the grunt work of the SE job that we don't want to do.
Operationalizing.
But what if you fancy title on it? So, it makes it better. I would say things that generally speaking are good AI problems. High volume text. We've got a lot of stuff and you need to synthesize it where human eyeballs are on it are not going to do the trick. You need something to be able to help synthesize things. Unstructured information is typically a huge part of that. Pattern recognitions in language and things of that nature, repetitive drafting, sort of answer from knowledge-based scenarios. These are all really good, easy AI problems. Where maybe AI not so much, especially when we talk about, let's say enterprise selling, for example, strategy, politics of an enterprise sale or a sale in general, pricing authority, product gaps. Those are things where AI can support with data and sort of the story, but that still comes from humans a lot of the time. So I think some of those pieces, like thinking thoroughly of, okay, is this a problem that I can ask AI to solve? And which ones are maybe not so good?
Can I give you an example of this? Because
yes,
when it comes to on enterprise sales, I think of this funny thing that happened to me about a year ago in one of my group chats. My friend was apologizing to another friend for something that he had said or done. And the most ChatGPT output apology landed in my text messages. And we all did not receive that well. I think there's something to be said for knowing when you as a human still have something that you can add a lot when it comes to these complicated relationships with not just companies, but individuals.
100%. I have said this multiple times because I've been asked the question many times of, do you think AI is going to take over and you'll get replaced with AI? I don't think in my lifetime that is the case because of exactly what you said. I mean, maybe well into the future, I'm sure at some point. But in the next few years, the next, let's say 10 years, I don't think someone's going to spend $5 million on a software package without talking to a human being, without asking questions, without making sure it works. And so AI is going to, maybe in the future, but I don't think anytime soon. That's not getting replaced now. I can ask questions of the LLMs and get a ton of crazy hallucinations, and I can assure you that's not happening anytime soon. And so I think that's key. There is still a human element to all of this. And you're absolutely right. You need to be able to discern when it's good to use the AI and when it's not so good to use the AI. Honestly, running experiments. This is how you learn. Is this an AI problem? What type of problem is it? Run an experiment. Try it out. Just prototype something quick. That's actually the beauty of a lot of these things is that you can run really quick iterations and experiments. And over time, that loop of classifying the product and picking the pattern, running an experiment, you can stop asking the question, can AI do this? You're just going to have an idea of what things make sense with AI and what things don't.
Yeah, definitely the more that you use it. I can attest that I've done a lot more of working with AI to think through a lot of personal solutions for things that I've got in my house, which I think that's a great place that I actually recommend someone to start for their AI fluency, which it sounds like maybe you've kind of had the same experience as well, Darlene. When you do things that have got a little bit less business stake to try something out, when it's just for your personal life, just for fun, do something, try it out, try building something, try to do an agent for something silly, right? Something that you never think would be practical just so that you can learn it. It helps you to understand that wasn't a good implementation versus doing something like sending a customer an automated email based on an agent that you built and you realize after the fact that was a really bad idea. Do something in your personal life with almost no risk involved, and you'll start to feel more comfortable. Because the problem right now is like a lot of people just aren't comfortable with it because they've been scared of the potential business fallback. And so find a way to sandbox it in a safe space, and pick a cool personal project is a great place to start.
And it makes it so much more fun. Like, in my opinion, it's so much more fun because you can then truly understand whether this is useful or not, as opposed to sort of it being sort of the guise of business value.
Darlene, is your diving log public?
It is not yet. I am a perfectionist, and so I want to tweak it a little bit more, but it's close. It's a good.
If it ever goes live, I think that would be a great example for everyone who's listening to see.
I would be happy to share. I tried to buy versus build, and there was not anything that was suitable for me. So I've been logging everything in an Airtable for the last few years, and it kind of makes it fun to now be able to build a front end that suits my needs. The skills were not there to be able to do it previously.
Well, that sounds like an unstructured data kind of problem to put it in a structured format so that people can see it. Yes. Wow. Fascinating.
Exactly.
So we touched down here on an individual contributor. Here's how I go. But from a leadership perspective, I think this is going to sound very familiar to a lot of people. Something comes down from your CEO, and it usually is the CEO now. We need to increase productivity using AI by X%. I'm a leader. Where do I even go? I'm probably using AI somewhere, and I'm getting feedback from my team on what they're doing. How do I, as a leader, structure a rollout and get to those 3 frameworks that you mentioned before, operationalizing and bring it to the technology side?
I mean, I feel like everybody has their AI story kind of at the ready, or should at least have their AI story at the ready. So I try to get beyond sort of those buzzwords that often come up as we talk to people about this. So, one of the things that I look for is sort of evidence in 2 places: habits and artifacts. So talking to my team, how are you using AI? And typically then brings up the spiel of, oh, here's how I'm using it. But it becomes, tell me exactly what you did and what are your go-to tools. And I'm looking for concrete workflows. I'm looking for signs that they checked these things that are coming out and refining the output, not just pasting them into the email, a la a mass email and or generic apology text. But like, you're checking that, you're putting your voice into it, and you're using these to help you, not just to sort of copy paste. So to me, in my one-on-ones with team and in my skip levels with the team, this is super important to me. I mentioned earlier, like an IC who wants to help and build out some of the processes. This is where almost all my ideas come from into operationalizing the SE team. The teams are really coming up with some really interesting ideas, and I want to leverage those. I want to give them credit for that, but I also want to leverage them across the whole team. So to me, habits, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Tell me specifically and give me details so I can see it. And I use that really as a way to help grow their careers, but also help balance our SE team. I'd say the other part of that is like seeing the actual output, seeing artifacts, particularly on the technical side. What is something that you've built or automated? Like, show me that small app that we built out as a customer demo. Even if it's like, your hobby or your side quest, like that's cool too. Like, let's use those to help enable the team. It doesn't have to necessarily be an app that we built out. Like, let's create a prompt library, and what are prompts that have been used that have been super helpful to you. So I think like looking at both habits and the artifacts together is how I tend to look at things and how to be able to understand that. But I think also, I think it was mentioned on an earlier session, like being able to see who's using AI and who's not, because you can see that output from the actual LLMs, looking at metrics. To me, I want to know that information, but I also want to see the outputs of it. So great that we're using up a bunch of tokens, we're spending a bunch of money calling LLMs, but is that actually translating into real business value for our organization? I'm looking for things where SEs can specifically tell me how they operate and what they've shipped, even if it's something small, so that we're seeing real effects as opposed to just I'm asking a lot of questions and spinning our wheels.
That's some great progress. I think a lot of people are wanting to know right now. And I think the reason why these summits and these topics and these podcast episodes tend to be so popular is because everyone's sitting here going, either as the leader, what do I need to do? Or how do I get started? You said before, which I think is very correct, things are moving so fast that you'll never catch up, right? You'll never be at the forefront. I do follow some content creators who stay on the very forefront of AI and LLMs and everything. And even they say, they miss a lot because it's moving so fast, and it's their jobs. They are getting paid to solely make content on this stuff. So they're doing it full time. We certainly don't have that luxury. What's kind of the bare minimum if you need to get yourself to the point of understanding? Like, what's some real key takeaways of stay on top of reading these two things? Where do I go to make sure I'm at least not falling so far behind I can't ever be relevant?
I'll give you mine, but I would put it out to the chat. Like, I'd love to hear from the group, because I think collectively this group probably has a ton more information than I can personally share. But I'll be happy to share how I personally do it, how I coach my teams to do it, which I think is honestly just to get in there and do it. I know that's a very generic answer, but it's the easiest one. Not everybody, I realize, has sort of that CS background or the computer science degree with any coding experience. But these AI tools have really made it simple for you to be able to use natural human language to build out things. So I would say, don't be scared by the coding aspect. Don't be scared by the development side of things. You may never have put 1 ounce of code into anything, and you could still do it with AI. So I'd say, don't be scared, just go out and do it. I would say that's where I would start. Go build something, go build an app or an agent using AI and try it out. Yes, of course, there's so many things in terms of operationalizing, and that's a lot of the actual generation using just an LLM. But I'd say go build something, understand sort of the depth of what AI can do. So to me, it's hands-on. It's something new comes out. People are talking about Claude Code. Let me go and test out Claude Code and do something with Claude Code. If we're talking about Codex on OpenAI, let's go check it out. What do they have to offer? I'd say as you hear of new things, because there's, if you just spot check LinkedIn for 5 seconds, you're going to see something new pop up. Go and look it up. Just be curious, go and find the new things. I would say, number 1, go build something. AI makes it easy. Don't be scared. Number 2, just keep your ears open and look at different things. There are some newsletters that I look at. I'm happy to share after the fact. There are a few different forums that I look at. I'm happy to share those after the fact. But I would say that generally speaking, plug yourself into the tools themselves, because there's no better way to get experience than just try it out. I always could use some different sources. So if you all have some magical places you find out information, please share them in the chat, because I'd love to hear them too.
It's exactly the type of thing that I would love to see happening in Slack. I think even just a community hub here. If you found something that's useful, share that. That's exactly what our Slack is meant to be for. So I'd love to see, obviously you can throw it in chat right now, but hop over to PreSales Collective Slack, put it in there, what it is that you're using, resources you found helpful, and we can continue to get better at this together. Well, Darlene, before we're out of time, I want to leave you room for one final thought. That way we have got time. If there are any questions that have popped up during the session as well, we can get to those. What is your final kind of either hot take, something you leave someone with, something that maybe you were hoping we were going to talk about that we didn't, that you could say in a few minutes? What's your kind of final thought you want to leave people with?
It'll kind of be a little bit repetitive, because I think I've already said it a couple of times, but I'd say go build stuff with AI. Go and test it out. Go and play. Don't be afraid. So that's what I'll leave you with. Don't be afraid of AI. It is something that over the course of my career, this is probably one of the biggest evolutions that we've seen, but it's not scary. We can do this. And so go and get in there. If you are just using AI right now for answering questions a la Google style, you're already behind. So get in there and start building, start looking at how you can utilize it better, because I think this question is going to keep coming up. It's going to keep coming up from your managers. It's going to keep coming up from your leadership, from hiring. It's certainly happening at a hiring manager perspective. It's certainly happening even from customers and from partners perspective. So I'd say just get out there and use it. Do more of it. Don't be afraid. And I'd say the second thing that I'd leave us with is actually, I very much in my teams look at a culture of collaboration. You figured out a cool prompt, share that information. Let's make sure everybody knows it. And don't be scared of that. And I would say that we as an SE community should feel the same way. We should share these things. We should leverage each other. And let's also foster that same level of collaboration amongst each other. I think using Slack or whatever is great, but let's share. Don't be afraid to do that. I think we all get better together.
When I was growing up, there was this ad on TV, and it was Shrek and Donkey. And they were saying to kids, go outside, get active. And now I think instead of that, we've got Eddie Murphy replaced by Darlene saying, go get active with AI.
I love it. I'll definitely turn into the donkey. That's perfect.
Well, Darlene, thanks so much for being on this session and on the special edition of the podcast. It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy chatting with you. And man, Matthew, thanks so much for helping to co-host.
Absolutely. Thank you both, Matthew and Jack.
Thank you for listening to the PreSales podcast by PreSales Collective. Did you know that we also post on the PreSales Collective blog following each episode? Head there to read through information on shows you might have missed or find another past episode to listen to. For more information on the PreSales podcast itself and to listen to those past episodes, visit presalescollective.com/podcast.